Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. My name is Michael Barth, and today is Owner's Stories. It's Tuesday. It's Owner's Stories Day. We're up to number 30. Number 30 in Owner's Stories. It's getting up there. It's getting up there, and I've still got a lot more to get through. In saying that, I'm always looking for new owners to chat to. So if you've got, if you own a Porsche, if you own a 911, if you own a Boxster, if you own a Cayman, if you own a 944, a 924, a 928, whatever Porsche you own, it doesn't matter. Every Porsche is important. Every Porsche has a great story. And if you want to be on this podcast, just reach out to me. The best way to reach out is usually by Instagram, PorscheCooled. You can also go to my Michael Barth one as well, michael.barth, and just send me a DM. Just send me a DM, tell me about your cars, say hello, and I'll get back to you and we'll organize a time to schedule recording. These recordings are all done by Zoom. All you need to have is you just need to have a microphone or a headset of some sort. It just makes the sound that little bit better. I'll look after all the recording side of it and we'll just chat about your car. We'll chat about your Porsche story. But anyway, today I have another owner from the United States coming in from the US, and I've got Scott coming through very, very shortly. He's going to connect into Zoom in about 10 minutes or so. I'm just doing the recording in preparation for that. Scott is a longtime Porsche owner. He owns a few Porsches. You would have seen it in the title. Some he still has, some he doesn't, I think. Once again, I'm going to say what I say at most of the podcasts that I start, most of the owner's stories, is I don't know a lot about Scott's story. I kind of like it that way. I kind of like how I just start talking to people and I don't know a lot and I find out along the way with you guys. Anyway, let's get Scott. Let me just get organized. Like I said, it's almost time and I'll get Scott and we'll start talking about his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Like I said, owner stories. Number 30 today. So today I have a good one actually because I have Scott coming in from the US and he's a longtime Porsche owner and Scott's with me now. How are you, Scott? Good afternoon. Good evening.
I'm doing good.
Thanks for taking the time out this afternoon to come on the podcast. I know it's about mid-afternoon there where you are, isn't it, in the US?
Yeah, it's about 2:00 right now. 2:00 in the afternoon.
So you've taken a long lunch break, or you've got the afternoon off?
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and take the rest of the afternoon off. I think I'm done now.
That's good. So I'll just tell the listeners, you reached out to me through Instagram, which I always say is the best way to contact me for owner stories. And Scott's got an interesting story, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it today because there's a good variety, and you would have seen it in the title what Scott owns now, and there's a really good variety of Porsches, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. So Scott, the best way to start these owner stories is always starting at the very beginning. And I always like to start with the same question and end with the same question. And the first question is, when did you first start noticing Porsche? Was it when you were a kid? Was it just you just had a love of cars, or did it happen later in life when you started getting a little bit older and you had the funds to actually started to enjoy them and to buy them? So when did it all start for you?
Yeah, so it all started when I was a kid. My family moved from Illinois to Indiana, and that would have been somewhere 70, 77, 78 time period. And I remember we moved into a new house in the middle of the winter, and it was in the middle of a blizzard. And when I say blizzard, I mean we had snow up to the top of our garage.
Oh, okay.
And we were not used to that, so we didn't know what to think about that. But anyway, that spring, I saw the neighbor open up his garage door, and he was a young guy, looked like he was doing pretty good. But he opened up the garage door and pulled out a 924, a black on black 924, and I remember thinking that was really something. I've never seen a Porsche. That was the first Porsche I'd ever seen. So that was pretty cool. And then shortly after that, there was a big buzz over at his house, and he had just gotten the first 944.
Oh, okay.
That had come to our town. So back then we had a Porsche dealer local. It was called Putnam Porsche. Super small. Matter of fact, I just went past the old dealership just a couple of days ago, and it just amazes me how small that dealership was. I don't think you could fit 3 cars in their showroom.
So it's still a Porsche dealership?
No, they've been closed for decades.
Oh, they've been closed for a long time. Okay.
Yeah, but the building's still there.
Okay.
Anyway, so and I just remember how exciting it was that, I was a kid. I don't know, 10, 12 years old. I remember how exciting it was that, that all the neighbors came over to look at it. All of his friends came over, and, they were, everybody was all over this car. And this was just a real neat thing that everybody was excited about. So that was my first Porsche.
Okay, so you see that 944 Scott. The guy gets a 944. It's memorable because it's your first Porsche that you've seen. And then in latter years, does that 944 come back into your head? Like when you start thinking, you want to get your own car. I mean, most people can't start with a Porsche. Most people start with something, more affordable. So what came first? How did your car journey start, and how did you get into your first Porsche?
Okay, so yeah, after that, I didn't do much with Porsches, but when it came about time for me to get my own first car, I remember my dad and I, we brought home a tore up, wrecked '69 Triumph Spitfire.
Okay, nice.
And so we made a deal that we would fix it up, and then I would drive it. And if I didn't like it, I could sell it, and I could buy something different.
Okay.
And of course, after we fixed it all up, I drove it, and it was fun. It was exciting, but boy, those weren't really great cars from the factory. So when they were brand new, they weren't really great. This one didn't have any heat. We live in Indiana, where we get snow and cold weather, and you need heat. And
so your father was quite mechanical. He knew how to wrench. He knew how to fix cars. Was that something he used to do? No.
Yeah, no. We both learned it at the same time. But with that car, I mean, we took the brakes apart. We rebuilt the brakes. We rebuilt the engine. When we got it, we actually pushed it. I don't know, probably 5 or 6 blocks down the street from the neighbor we bought it from, who had it. It was a project for him too, and he didn't get onto it. But we pushed it home and we both started working on it, and we both learned at the same time. But that being said, that's how I learned how to start turning wrenches, was messing with that car.
Okay. So you kept that car for a while? You used to drive that car around, or did it leave pretty quickly?
Yeah, I drove that for about 2 years. But boy, I'll tell you, it really wasn't a super safe car. I mean, even the brakes after we'd redone them, I mean, we did everything. We redid the motor, we redid the brakes. We even painted it in our garage.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So are you someone that works on your Porsches now? You actually work on your cars? You tinker with your cars, or you get other people to do it?
I do. I tinker with all of them. Now the bigger stuff, I usually have that done, but I'm normally pretty close when they're doing it. So I'm either getting parts or, even helping.
Okay.
But most other things I do myself.
All right, that's great. Let's jump to the first Porsche. So, I'm guessing, I'm not sure how many years have passed, and then you start thinking, okay, you're in a position and you think, okay, I'm going to buy a Porsche, I'm going to buy a 911. How did that come about, and what was the first Porsche that you bought?
Yeah, so I was, after college, I went directly into the Air Force, and I had 2 friends there. One of them had a 944, and one of them had an early 80s Targa, 911 Targa.
Nice.
And so that's what kind of got me looking that direction. And a matter of fact, I had another friend then that had you are looking or hunting for a 912, but I can remember writing in that one thinking, boy, this is not like the 911 that my other friend had.
Yeah.
anyway, that being said, after that, I got out of the Air Force and I came home. So at that point, I'm in my early 30s, and I've got a real good friend of mine that was looking for a 993. And so I helped him look for that. And he and I actually traveled to Oklahoma to try to pick it up. And when we got there, they'd had a flood. And this car was sitting in the middle of a Porsche dealer's parking lot and had water up to the bottom of the rockers.
Oh, really? Wow.
And it was sitting in a puddle. And it was bigger than a puddle, I guess. But at that point, he and I both looked at each other and said, this might be one we should leave alone.
Yeah.
So we rented a car and drove back.
Okay.
So that's what started me looking at that point, because he ended up getting a different one, but very similar. But so I started looking for one, and I found a 98 C2S. And at the time, I didn't know much about the 2S, but later found out that was a pretty special car.
It's a very special car. So you found a 993. You've got the 98, so almost the end of the production, wasn't it? You bought a 98.
Yeah.
Yeah. So almost
it was the end of the production, and from what I understand, for the North American market, they imported 993 of them.
Yeah, it's very rare. I mean, that's why they're so hard to come by now, aren't they? And they're so and also fetching very high dollars. Yeah. So this was at a dealer. You found this car. How did you find this car? Was it a private sale? Was it a dealer? How did you come buy it?
Yeah, so this was a private sale. As a matter of fact, this was from it had been damaged in the front, and so it was at a reduced cost. But I brought it back to Indiana, and we fixed up the front of it, and then I drove it for many years after that.
So the damage wasn't that bad, that it wasn't structural damage or anything like that. It was just like cosmetic type of damage to the front bumper, or was it more serious?
Yeah, bumper, headlight, fender, all of it was bolt-on stuff. Though all of it was we unbolted it and bolted the new stuff on and had it painted to color, and
so it was being sold in that condition. It was being sold damaged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and I knew that day. That's back, the early internet days, and the guy had sent me some photos of it. I knew I could do a lot of the work on it myself. I'd seen wrecked cars before, so I wasn't necessarily too concerned about it being wrecked. And that was a way I could afford to get into it. I think I paid back then $18,000 for that car.
Wow. That's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it today, that's crazy. So you've got your first Porsche. You buy a 911. You don't just buy a 911. You've got a 993 Carrera 2S, which is a fantastic car. Manual or Tiptronic?
It was Tiptronic.
Okay, Tiptronic. So you fix the car up. You start driving the car. This is how many years ago? 20 years ago? Less than 20 years ago?
20 years ago. Because I sold it on my 40th birthday. Getting ready to, and I'm 55 now, but getting ready to start a family at that point. And
so how did it? I always like to know the feeling, Scott. How did it feel? You remember that 944 that from when you were a kid. You managed to get a 911. You've got a Carrera 2S. How did it feel when you took ownership of that car and you had it fixed and you had it sorted and you started driving it?
Yeah, I remember that. It was brought to me on a flatbed trailer. I remember it coming off the flatbed trailer, and I was standing behind it, and the driver fired it up and was getting ready to back it off of this trailer. And boy, the excitement level was to a 10. That even with it being banged up in the front of it, it didn't matter. We but pulled it off, and then at that point, I became I dove into the Porsche world pretty deeply. Reading all the magazines, reading all the books, reading all the blogs, any information I could get. I was devouring Porsche.
It's an addiction, isn't it? It's an addiction, that's for sure. Once you start, that's it.
It's
all over. It's all over. So when you bought this car, then it was probably reasonably new, even though it was damaged. It was probably not. How many years old was it when you purchased it?
Yeah, it would have been 2 years old, maybe 3 years old. I
So
bought it in,
okay, so it's like a new 911. It's pretty, even though it's had the bit of damage which you got fixed, which didn't impact anything in the long run. It's a
yeah.
reasonably new car.
Yeah, exactly. It was a reasonably new car, and at that point in time, the Tiptronic was, boy, they were. I mean, that was a big selling point.
Yeah, it
And
was.
this was Porsche's new thing.
Yeah.
That I mean, had that car not been a Tiptronic, I would still have it. But
So what was the deciding factor then? So how many years did you own the 993 for? How many years did you own? Did you own it for quite a while?
6 or 7 years, 8 years possibly.
Okay. So you enjoyed the car. That's a long time to own one 911. So you must have enjoyed it. So was that the deciding factor, the Tiptronic, in the end, that you said, I want to change it up. I want a manual, or I want something faster, or what was it from the? So the 993, you've just got the 993, right? You don't own any other Porsches at the same time.
No, correct. I only own the one.
You own the one, so you've got the 993, and then you decide, okay, I'm gonna trade it. I'm gonna get something else. How did that come about?
Well, at that point, I had a 2-car garage, and my wife and I both had cars, and I was driving a pickup truck, and I would walk past that Porsche every day and go get in my pickup truck and go to work. And, then I got to the point where I was like, well, I don't want to put the miles on it. And then I got to the point where, I used to, I would wash it more than I would drive it.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Well, I have since changed, but that's how I was then.
Okay.
And so, my wife and I, we were talking about starting a family, and it just seemed like a responsible thing to do. I had a play toy that I didn't necessarily use all that much, and it kind of became a toy that wasn't used.
Okay.
So, and my wife I made the mistake of putting a whatever it was, the rest of the world suspension on it. The ROW 30.
Oh, okay. Yes.
And Indiana roads are terrible. I mean, this is where the potholes come from.
Okay, so it destroyed the ride, did it? The ride was terrible on the roads in
just
Indiana.
Destroyed the ride. And I mean, it was bad enough that my wife didn't even like riding in the car. So even when I would get in it, I would drive it by myself. So, but I still love the car. I still love Porsche. So, I mean, I was hooked on the brand.
So you got the 993 Carrera 2S. You're not driving it as much, so you decide to move it on. How many years pass before you get your next Porsche?
Just a couple, and maybe 1 or 2. I had some friends that we were all training for marathons at the time. There was 5 or 6 of us, and we all lived in pretty close proximity to each other. And one by one, everyone had Porsches. I had the 2S, and then a friend of mine got a Boxster, and then we were introduced to another friend that had a 71 Targa and a Boxster. I think his was an 04. The other one was an 04 Boxster. And then another guy we ran with, he ended up picking up I don't know what it was at that point, an 05 or an 06 C4S.
Okay.
And it was funny because we would run, and we'd all drive our cars to one person's house. And it was funny. Someone was walking down the street.
It's like your own private Porsche club.
Right. Well, there was a guy walking down the street, and he said, "This looks like a PCA event." And so at that point, we started calling it the PCA E. So we call it the PCA Elkhart branch. And then we gave it a Greenleaf Clubhouse address.
Sounds great. So how does it? So how many years pass then? So you sell the 993, and then a couple of years pass. You said not that very long, a year or 2 years pass, and then you start looking for another car. So you start looking for a Porsche.
Correct. I started looking for one of the guys that I ran with. He ended up picking up a 2000 Carrera convertible. a base model Carrera convertible.
Yep.
And at that point, he drove it for just a very short amount of time, and then I ended up buying that one from him.
Okay. Did he purchase it new or was it used?
No, it was used. It was a used car.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that point, it had not lived a super great life. So at that point, it was perfect for me because I picked it up and, I wet sanded it and buffed it and polished it and did paint correction on it. And at that point, it came out looking beautiful.
So it was just cosmetically, it wasn't looking great, or mechanically it was okay, Scott? It was just the paintwork and the interior that needed a bit of tender care, or was it mechanically there was issues as well?
Interior was perfect. Mechanically, it was perfect. It just had paint issues. It just wasn't taken care of. It looked like it had sat in a parking lot for its life. And at that point, it was probably a 4 or 5 year old car at that point.
Okay, so still reasonably new. So how was
correct.
it? So it's a 996 Cabriolet.
Correct.
So you've gone from the hardtop, you've gone from the Carrera 2S and the 993. How was the experience going from the 911 Carrera 2S to the Cabriolet to the 996, going from the air cooled to the water cooled? Can you remember were there any key differences that you liked or you didn't like?
Well, the water cooled was a manual transmission.
Okay.
So that was a big plus for it. And the fact that it was a convertible, I enjoyed the convertible. And it was faster. I mean, it was faster. It was, it was more modern. But it did not have the beauty of the 993. I mean, the 993 is still my favorite Porsche.
It always surprises me that the 996 is faster than the 993 2S, though. You know what I mean? I mean, I've heard that before because it's lighter, right? I mean, the Cabriolet is obviously a little bit heavier as well, but they were a lighter. The 996 were lighter. Well, the earlier ones were lighter anyway.
And the 993 used to start out in second gear. The Tiptronics start in second gear.
Okay.
You would have to manually slide the gear selector over and put it into first if you wanted to go into first. Where, like I say, a manual, you can wind them up a little bit and you get that that acceleration.
Okay, so you've got a manual 911, you've got a Cabriolet, you're enjoying the top down. How is it on the roads in where you live? Are you still living in the same area? The roads are still terrible. They're really bad roads. How's the car feel?
Yeah, in the same area, the roads are still terrible. But that car, I did not touch the suspension, left it as it was, and that car rode much, much better. And now, again, I think a lot of that is the suspension because the rest of my cars, I haven't changed out suspension on any of my other ones just because of the experience I had with that 993. Around here, the lowered suspensions are difficult to manage.
So how old was it's a 2000 996 Cabriolet, right? How old was that when you bought it? What year did you buy that?
So that would have been 2005, 2006 period. So it was fairly new. It was still fairly new.
And did you have any, I mean, the listeners always like to know, were there any issues you had with that car? Because it's quite a new 996. Most people buying 996 now, they're buying them and they're 20-year-old cars, 15, right. 20-year-old cars. As a new car, like a car that's only 5 years old, were there any major issues with the 996 Cabriolet?
No, there were no issues whatsoever. But, at that point in time, that's when the IMS, the dreaded IMS, that's when all that started. The cars were getting a couple of years on them, and that's when they started to fail. So if you spent any time on the internet at all, you were terrified that the car was going to blow up every time you started it. So
was that a deciding? So that's all coming out in the press, and then there's a court case and the thing against Porsche or whatever happened in the US, right? So is that is that a deciding factor for you to say, well, I'm going to look for something else?
No, well, at that point, I immediately dropped the transmission in it. And, at that point, they had a couple different fixes. There was one company selling a ceramic bearing. And then the first LN Engineering, or, the Jake Raby fix, was just a beefier bearing.
Right.
So we immediately, me and a mechanic friend of mine, we immediately pulled the transmission out of it. We pulled the bearing out. We put a new bearing in, put a new rear main seal in. And at that point, we pulled the bearing out, and the bearing was perfect. Okay. The bearing we pulled out was perfect.
So you're quite mechanical then to do that yourself. You actually are quite good if you're changing the bearing, because it's not super easy, is it? There's still a lot to do.
Yeah, and that was back before we had all the YouTube videos showing us how to do it.
I was going to say that you just have a book to read or some diagram from Porsche, maybe. Do you? How do you know how to do that then? Who's giving you the information to know how to change the IMS bearing?
Well, the bearing came with some instructions, and then obviously at that point in time, we asked a lot of questions. But once we got in there and saw what was going on, it's really not a terrible job to do. It's if you've got the tools, and at that point the tools had just come on the market, so we did buy the tool set.
Okay.
And
it's weird though, isn't it? I mean, I've heard, I did an owner story the other day as well with a guy that's got a Boxster from the US, and he just bought it recently and he changed the bearing. And once again, the bearing comes out, there's nothing wrong with it. It's all fine. You know what I mean? It's like this thing about the IMS, but I've heard, and yourself, Jeff, who I spoke to the other day, and other people as well have taken the bearing out, and there's no issue. So it makes you wonder, and I know it's one of those things that's always in your head. It's always in the head with my car as well, the 997, even though mine's got the larger bearing, and I think LN Engineering has something now for the larger bearing for the 06s. But I've never done mine. I mean, my engine number seems to be in the safer zone, but it's still always something on your mind. But I don't know, does it happen that often? This is what I'm getting to, Scott. Does it really happen that often or not? Because 9 times out of 10, people take the bearing out and it's fine. So
yeah, and ours was, and the rear main seal was in good shape. The car didn't leak, and at that point, the car had maybe 30,000 miles on it, so it was a low mile car. Okay. Matter of fact, it was a big toss up. Do we replace the clutch or not? We ended up replacing it only because we had it open. But I mean, the car had such low miles on it. We even contemplated just sticking the factory clutch back in it and bolting it up.
Because at 30,000 miles, it's probably still okay, isn't it? I mean, it depends on how heavy you are on the clutch. I mean, sometimes it can happen at that mileage, but it depends on how heavy you've been on the clutch. Yeah, and
it's kind of odd because there's such a fear with the IMS. There's such a, for me, it actually did me good because it made the cars cheaper.
Yeah.
And I wasn't afraid of fixing it. As a matter of fact, even to this day, I think that is passing now because I can see these cars. They're slowly creeping up. Matter of fact, I was looking for my next one's going to be a C4S is what I would like to. It's what I'm kind of shopping right now.
Well, we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But see, the C4S, I worry now because the C4S is almost like we've missed the boat. I mean, I was looking at those as well, but it looks like, I'm not sure the US prices, but I know in the UK and Australia, the prices have jumped up very, very quickly. In fact, in Australia today, I saw a 996 Carrera advertised, and it was 80,000 Australian dollars, and it had, I guess, equivalent of 60,000 miles on it. So 80,000 Australian dollars is probably what, 60,000 US, $60,000 US at today's rate, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So it's, the prices they're in 997 price range now. So the 997s have all gone up. So the Carrera 4S and the turbos, which I want to get onto because I know you have one, they're getting very, very sought after, very sought after. So you've got this 996 Cabriolet. It's 5 years old or so. You change the IMS. You're feeling good about it. You're enjoying the car. It's got the manual transmission. It's good on the roads where you live. Why did you decide that you wanted to get rid of it? You wanted something else?
Again, it came back to family, and I've got a little boy. At that point, he was little. So I had a friend of mine, and matter of fact, my friend still owns the car. The car's still local here.
Okay.
But he said, you ought to sell that to me. And I mean, the first thing that came out of my mouth is, it's for sale if you want to buy it. And so
everything's for sale.
Well, exactly. And so we worked out a deal, and I was happy. And, we were, I was actually at that point, I was kind of I was driving Mercedes too. I had a CL55.
Okay.
So a 500 horse
That's
supercharged.
a nice car though. CL55 is a nice car.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So that's what replaced it. And that's what I ended up driving.
Okay.
And then,
so you don't have a Porsche. So you got rid of the cab. Your friend's enjoying the cab. So you're seeing that Cabriolet. You're seeing him around driving it, right? So it's not sort of disappeared.
Yeah.
How long does it take before you start thinking you need another 911?
Well, it was maybe 2 years later. The same friend that we went to Oklahoma to look for the first 993 that started it, he called me, and he said, a lot about Porsches. Obviously not that I owned a bunch of them, but I just dove into the brand so heavily. I mean, I knew what they were. Right. Anyway, he calls me and says that someone had just called him and offered him a 996 turbo. Okay. And he said, I'm not interested, but they're trying to find out they're trying to figure out what this car would be worth. And so I started asking some questions, and it was a local company here that the owner, or the owner's son, I should say, bought the car as a company car, bought it brand new as a company car. And now it was time for the company to prop up the books, get it ready for sale, that kind of thing. And they discovered that they owned a Porsche 996 Turbo, and it was sitting in a warehouse.
Okay. So what was it? Was it a Cabriolet? Was it a coupe? Was it manual? Was it a 0.2 or a 0.1? Tell the listeners what it actually was and how you came about to acquiring this car.
Yeah, it was a 2004 996 Turbo cab. And then so they asked me, they said, well, will you come over and take a look at this and tell us what we've got? And so I was excited to go look at that car. So we walk into this factory, and back in the back corner, there's a 996 sitting there. I mean, okay. It had a 1/4 inch of dust sitting on top of it, hadn't moved. And so I start talking to the guys that are running this company now. And, they say, we don't know what we've got. They had heard some rumors about a turbo blowing up in the car. They had heard some rumors that the car didn't run well, didn't know what they had. And so at that point, as soon as I saw it, I said, I'll be happy to tell you what I think it's worth. I said, but I would also, like you to know that I would be interested in buying it. So what I tell you what it's worth is what it would be worth to me. Yeah. So I look over the car completely, and, the car is just perfect. It was just stuck in a corner and left for,
So how many miles did it have on it, Scott?
At that point, it had mid 70,000 miles on it.
Okay, so 70,000 miles. So it has been driven. So this was an 04, it's a 996.2 turbo cab. What year was this when you decided to buy it? How long ago?
So this would have been 2013, 2014 time period.
Okay, so a 9-year-old car, yeah.
Yeah. So I look all over this car, and there is no indication that it's been abused. There's no indication that it was just forgotten. It wasn't torn up or anything. It just, they forgot what they had. So at that point, we had to jump it, but I fired the car up, and boy, it fired right up and sounded great. So I did a couple quick checks, realized that it did not have a dipstick. For being someone that they said, hey, can you give us an idea what this Porsche would be worth? And you seem to know a lot about Porsches. I spent 15 minutes back there looking for a dipstick. They don't have them.
Yeah. It's got the electronic one, right?
Exactly. So it took me a
it's
second.
funny you say that. When I bought my 997, I had the same problem. I actually rang up my Porsche specialist and said, I don't know where the dipstick is. I should have just looked in the manual. And then I looked in the manual and I felt like an idiot because it's got the electronic one. But
yeah. So then we're in this warehouse, and I'm telling these guys kind of what I think about the car, and happened to look up on top of some racking, and there sits a hard top for the car.
So how did it get forgotten though? They just. How long was it parked there for? Was it parked there for quite some time? Was it?
My guess is a year, maybe two.
Really? It always amazes me, Scott, how people just leave cars, you can see why why when people find cars in underground car parks in the US and there's just this, 70s Carrera sitting there or something, it's kind of bizarre, but it seems to happen quite a lot, doesn't it? It really does seem to happen quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, and again, this was a company car. So it was the guy's personal car, but it was in the company's name.
Yeah.
And when he left the company, he left the car.
Oh, right. I see. So you decide to buy the car, you offer them a price and they accept it.
Yeah.
And this car because it's been sitting for over a year or 2 years, what precautions do you take? What do you do once you've done the deal? Do you get a major service done? Is there something that, are you looking over the car thoroughly because it has just been sitting? What did you do once you purchased it?
Yeah. So I don't know if you knew me, you would know that those kind of things don't tend to scare me too much. As soon as I fired it up and listened to it, all the gauges came alive. The temps came up, the oil pressure came up. So I pulled it out of the warehouse and proceeded to redline it. I didn't, no precaution whatsoever.
Okay.
I put it in first gear and let it have it, and then after that, real quickly, I did oil change, and we got it up on a rack and went underneath it, and the car was perfect. The car was absolutely perfect. There was not a turbo problem. There was not, all these guys, they just remember hearing rumors of the car and nobody knew. But at that point, like I said, once I got it home, then I started digging through the car, and I found a stack of paperwork that was 1.5 inches thick. The guy who had it took very good care of it.
That's
and
fantastic. So
he had
Sorry, go ahead.
The guy that had it had a warehouse in California. So he would drive it from Elkhart to California and then spend time there at his warehouse there and then drive it back. Okay. And that's the reason why it had so many miles on it.
All right. So it's long drives. So it's pretty good for the car, really, not sort of short traffic, stop and go sort of drives.
Yeah, because there was a bunch of the receipts in there, or a bunch of the invoices in there were from Beverly Hills.
Okay.
And I was like, this is an Indiana car in California.
Okay, so you've got this 996 turbo cab. 996 turbos are very sought after now, whether it be Cabriolet or coupe. And you still have this car today, correct? Tell the listeners so this car must be pretty special because you've held on to it.
Well, that story gets better. So shortly after that, probably within a year, my wife and I divorced, and in the divorce, I sold the car.
Oh, okay.
So the car, through two other hands, through the guy I sold it to, he sold it to a dealer, a local dealer, and traded it on a Corvette. And then a fella out of Miami bought it and had it down in Miami. So in 2018, I get a phone call from a fellow. I don't even know who he was, but He was calling, and he started asking some questions about the turbo. And he said, I know you had it listed for sale, back in 2013, 2014. And he was just asking questions, where the coolant line's pinned, where, was the clutch ever changed? Did you ever have any troubles with the car?
So this is someone that wants to buy the car. It's not a dealer. It's someone who's actually interested in purchasing the car from whoever's got it up for sale. Is that what's happening?
Correct. Yeah. So it's somebody who's investigating it from the guy in Florida that's now selling it.
Okay. So what do you do?
Well, at first I talked to him, and it was an odd phone call, but I talked to him, and I told him the information that I knew about it. I kind of gave him the story of how I came about getting it, and then he and I both started putting the pieces together as how it got to Florida. And then so at that point I started asking some questions about the car. And I was, where's the car located? And, what's the guy asking for it? And the guy wouldn't tell me. He was like, I'm not telling you any information. He said, you go buy that car back.
Okay.
And at that point I told him, I said, no, there's no way. I'm not buying that car back. I already sold it once. So at this point I'm remarried. And, so I thought it was funny. So I called my wife on the phone. I said, you won't believe this. This fella from somewhere calls me asking about that old Porsche I had. Yeah. And the first thing she said is, you have got to get that car back. Okay. She said, this is a sign. You got to get the car back. So it was in Florida. Okay. So I got on the internet and started looking through Craigslist and ended up finding a listing for that car on Craigslist out of Miami.
See, this guy rings you up. He wants you to help him. He wants you to give information about the car, but he's not willing to tell you where it's listed. You know what I mean? Like,
correct.
I don't know. There's something not right there, is there? There's something not right there. Okay, so you find the car, and then what do? You go down to Miami, you buy. How do you get the car back?
Yeah, so I ended up finding the listing on Craigslist. So I called the guy. And, now I'm trying to make sure that it's the same car. And then I asked him, I said, hey, is there a scuff mark on the passenger side airbag? And he says, yeah, there's a scuff mark on the airbag. I said, yeah, that's where my son used to kick the airbag. Okay. I was like, so we're now pretty sure that this is the same car. And then so that way, then my wife and I, we worked out a deal, and my wife and I got a flight. We flew down to Miami. We picked it up.
Okay. So the question I'm going to ask, did that guy that called you to find out about the car ever try to call you back and say anything to you because you bought it? No. You bought it from him when he really wanted it?
No, I never heard from him. Okay. I don't even know how serious he was about buying it, but it's an old saying. I say it quite a bit, but why one person's thinking, another person's buying. Yeah. So if you want it, you should go quick.
Okay, so you buy your 996 Turbo Cabriolet back. Are you happy when you get it back home? Are you happy with it? Is it as good as it was before? Had it been looked after or not looked after?
Yeah, it had been looked after well. I mean, and it had about 10,000 miles on it more than when I sold it, so it wasn't driven a bunch. But I remember we pulled up into the parking lot of the condominium where this guy had the car, and I remember telling my wife, I get excited from time to time, and I told my wife, I said, hey, if I start getting excited, tell me to slow down, because we want to make sure we check this car out and we want to make sure everything's right. So we get there, and it's about 10:30 at night, and we plan on driving the car back. And so the car's sitting under a lamp, a lamp in the parking lot. And within 3 seconds, I did one walk around the car, and I said, "It's perfect." I said, "I'll take it." And my wife kept saying, "Hey, you said you said to slow down if you got going too fast."
So I know the listeners are saying, so you when you first bought this car to when you repurchased it, had the price gone up or gone down?
The price, I paid about $10,000 more for it the second time.
Okay.
In a matter of 4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yeah, and I think I even got a really good deal on that car, because at that point in time we're close to 92,000 miles on it, so it's becoming a high mileage car.
All right, so you've got this car back, Scott. It's pretty special now because you've owned it before. There's marks on it from your son hitting the airbag, and you've bought it back. So you're enjoying that car. So you've still got the car today, so you're obviously still enjoying it. What makes you decide that you need another Porsche?
Yeah, so I like to keep abreast on the prices, and I wasn't a big Cayman fan, or I wasn't drawn to Caymans. I just kind of liked the 911s, the 996s, the 993s, the 997s. That's what I liked. And the Cayman that I've got, the previous owner put some bright blue stripes on it. And that's what caught my attention. So I started reading the ad on the car, and he goes through a whole list of all the things that are on the car, which were very impressive. I mean, it was suspension, it was steering wheels, it was wheels, it was, it's got an EVOM 370 kit on it. It's a 370 horsepower Cayman S. So it's got the underdrive pulleys. And
so were you looking for a Cayman S? You decided that you liked the look of them, and they sort of caught your eye again, and you started looking for a Cayman S, or you just came across this one?
Yeah, I just came across it, and the thing that caught me first was the blue stripes.
The blue stripes.
But then the price of it.
Okay, so it's very modified then. It was a very modified example.
Very modified example. And the price, the price was $14,000.
Yeah, so it's a great price.
So I started asking some questions. Well, why is the car so cheap? And the guy the owner, he told me, he said he was driving it home and it started making a funny noise.
Okay.
And I said, well, what was the funny noise? He said, well, it started making a ticking sound. Okay. And so he immediately took it to his independent mechanic, and they advised him that, it could be several things, but more than likely it was either rod cap bearings, it might have been bore score. But anyway, the things that they were advising him of were catastrophic failures, that the motor had not blown yet, but it was on its last leg. So they tell him that, it's going to be $2,000 minimum to pull the motor out and start diagnosing what it is. And at that point, he kind of decided that he was going to sell it. So I ended up picking it up, and I get in contact with the mechanic that's got the car. And I said, let's just pull the motor out of it. We'll source another motor, and we'll stick another motor in it. And I mean, it will be money ahead. So that's exactly what we did. So we sourced a motor, and we pulled all the goodies off the old motor, the IPD plenum, the underdrive pulleys, it had some other stuff on that motor too.
So how did you source a motor, Scott? You sourced a motor from a wreckers? Was from a wrecked Cayman, a wrecked Cayman S, or how did you go about sourcing an engine that you knew was going to be okay? Because we've still got the IMS issue with the Cayman.
Correct.
How did you go about that?
The independent the mechanic that had it, he had started doing the search for the previous owner. So they already knew where there was a good motor at, or they thought they already had that kind of sorted out for me.
So he did the work, this mechanic that the previous owner had been in contact with. He's the one who put the new motor in?
Correct. So I get back and we're in contact with each other because I hadn't picked the car up. I hadn't even seen the car. Only thing I'd seen is just pictures of it. And but the thought or plan I had was, so this is a motor out. Let's do everything we can do. So at that point, they put a new water pump on it. They put new coils on it. They put new plugs on it.
Okay.
They put new AOS, the air separator on it. So this was we did a major tune-up on the car while the motor was out. All new belts.
So has this become your fun car then? Is this the modded sort of fun Porsche that you drive hard, that is that what this car has become?
That's exactly what it is. Matter of fact, when I got it, it had racing seats in it. It had some racing bucket style seats in it, which they were painted that same blue as the stripe that's on the car. Okay. And that caught my eye. I thought, oh, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. These seats are, but they're very difficult to live with. So they came out pretty quickly.
Okay. So can I ask, because I don't really know this answer. So the cost of a replacement engine for a Cayman, what sort of price are you looking for?
Well, the total bill, which included included a clutch, included flywheel, included the coils, the spark plugs, the water pump, the AOS separator, all of that was, and getting the motor back in the car, $5,500.
Wow. Okay, that's cheaper than I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good. In total, that's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. And plus the price of the donor motor, which was about $4,500.
Okay. All right. That's still pretty good, though. That's still pretty good. So how long have you owned this car for, the Cayman? How many years ago? When did you buy it?
Yeah, I've had it for about a year now.
A year. Any issues with the new engine?
No, not at all. I'll tell you, you push the sport button, the sport mode in that car, and I think that must be what activates the program in the computer on it.
Oh, okay.
But that car just comes alive.
Fantastic.
And it just sings.
You've got two pretty good cars here, though. You've got a 996 turbo, which is not slow by any means, and then you've got a modded Cayman S, which is obviously sounds pretty fast as well. Which one do you enjoy the most?
Oh, by hands down, the turbo. I don't know if you've never driven a turbo, or if you've never spent a good amount of time in a turbo, other than just a real quick test drive. You really should do it, because when those turbos, when they finally spool up and hit, it's just such a visceral feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not be fast. It may not. A new 992 is quicker if we put a stopwatch on it, but boy, the drive of that is unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
With the turbo and with let's just say the turbo, the 996 turbo cab, since you've purchased it, have you done much to it? Have you added anything to it? Have you changed wheels? Have you upgraded exhausts? Have you done any other work to it, or it's pretty much how you bought it back?
Yeah. It came with an upgraded 2B exhaust on it.
Okay.
And it came with some aftermarket wheels on it. The fronts were 9.5s and the backs were 11.5s.
Right.
And it also came with the factory turbo twist that came with the car.
Yeah.
Our roads here are so terrible. I put the factory turbo twist back on it.
I really like those wheels, though, Scott. I think that wheel on that turbo is just the right wheel, the turbo twist. You know what I mean? I mean, you see them with aftermarket, but it's the factory wheels on that it just looks right. It just goes with it.
I agree, and it rides so much better. But so the only thing I've really done to it, I put a Cobb tuner on it.
Okay.
Which really, I don't know that it made the car any faster, but it certainly makes the throttle response quicker.
It's quite popular, isn't it? The Cobb's quite popular, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've read about it. I don't know a lot about it, but I have seen it on the forums on Renlist, a lot of people talking about it. Yeah,
and for $900, and it's a pretty safe upgrade. But at this point, I see them that, guys have got 600, 700 horse out of those cars, by upgrading the turbos and the intercoolers. But you know what? There's no place in this town I live in that I can get out of second gear without breaking the law.
Yeah.
I've got
it's probably safer to leave it how it is. There's probably enough power there.
That's what I think. And that's funny because I'm always upgrading everything, but this is that car. I just leave it alone.
Okay. Let's move forward because you've got the Turbo Cabriolet, you've got the 996, you've got the Cayman S, which is modded. So you've got a good combination, actually. You've got a good combination of two Porsches. But you're not satisfied. You obviously start looking for another one because there's one more that comes along. So tell the listeners about the next one.
So I was I'm a real estate appraiser, and I was appraising a guy's house, and I walked into his garage, and there was a 87 944S sitting in his garage. And of course, as soon as I saw the Porsche badge on it, I wanted to go over and see what it was and take a look at it without acting like I was digging through the guy's garage. But yeah, so I talked to the guy, and he said, he said, I'm going to sell it. It sounds like you'd be the right person for this car. So he and I kind of quickly worked out a real quick deal on it, and drove it home.
So right place, right time again. Right place,
right time. It was his this story that I got from the guy that I bought it from. His father is the local PCA club president.
Okay.
And a longtime PCA member who had fallen into bad health. His family didn't know what to do with this car.
Okay.
So the PCA president contacts his son and says, this would be a good way for you to get into the Porsche Club. And so he buys it, and they proceed to go through it. They did the belts. They put that car came factory with the Coney Sport suspension on it.
Okay.
And a limited slip differential. So it's it's a 16 valve car with.
Was the 944S, was that a worldwide model or was it just a US model? I thought there was I'm not really familiar that much with 944s. I know there's the 944 in Australia and the 944 Turbo.
That was that's a worldwide.
But this is a 944S.
944S. So that's the first one that they go from an 8 valve to a 16 valve motor.
Okay.
So gets a little more horsepower out of them. But
so what color is it, Scott? Tell the listeners how's the interior? What sort of interior does it have? Does it have a wild interior or a more subtle interior? Just tell the listeners a little bit more about the specs of the car.
So it's a white. It's a white with a burgundy or a kind of a deep red interior, and it's got the teledial wheels on it. Nice. And the interior was perfect. Those cars they get a lot of cracked dashes and that sort of thing. With this one, the dash is still in almost perfect condition. The steering wheel and the shift lever are both leather. So where the hands touch, it was not in great shape.
Right.
So the first thing I did was I pulled the steering wheel off and sent it away and had the steering wheel rewrapped and had the gear shift rewrapped.
So it's an auto, Scott?
No, it's a 5-speed.
Oh, it's 5-speed. Perfect.
Yeah.
So the red interior is leather interior, or is it the fabric, the period sort of fabric interior that Porsche did?
Yeah, it's a leather interior.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and believe it or not, that car. So I drove that all last summer, and we just got it back out, and it's turning spring here now. So we're starting to slowly get these cars back out again. But
so when did you purchase the 944, the 944S? How long ago?
yeah, so that would have been early summer last year. So I've had it for 9 months, 10 months now.
And what's the opinion? What do you think compared to your other two Porsches, compared to the Cayman S and to the Turbo, the 911 Turbo?
Yeah, the Turbo's still my favorite. I mean, that one's probably always going to be my favorite. But the 944, it's different, but it's a cruise. It's kind of a cruiser car because it's not fast. It's not it's not real quick, but it is such a fun car to drive. So far, my wife and I, we've done 3 little mini trips in it, and it really is it's a fun car to drive.
So it's a reliable car. It's been very reliable in the past 12 months. Yeah,
very reliable, and it's a car that I started up and I don't think twice about it. It doesn't, I'm not worried about anything breaking on it. And it's just a cruiser. It doesn't go real fast, but it's a fun car to cruise in.
Yeah, but it's the experience, isn't it? It's the same as me wanting a 912. It doesn't go fast, but it's that whole thing, isn't it? It's the experience of it,
Yeah.
They surely look good. That's for sure. I like the look of the 944s, the 928s, and the 924s. They definitely look good.
Yeah, and I get so many comments on that car. So last fall, my wife and I bought an old gas station.
Okay.
And
a working gas station?
No, it was an old gas station. It was a gas station in the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
It was a 3-bay old gas station. It happens to be just a handful of blocks from our house.
Okay.
And so it's got 2 bays on the top, but then it's got a drive-in basement. And the drive-in basement, I can get 6 cars down there.
Okay, that's dangerous.
Exactly. So that's
what's coming next. You mentioned it earlier on. What's coming next?
I don't know. I'm kind of starting to get in the mode of I've got the Cayman out right now, and they're going to do a wheels off detail on it where they're going to do the paint correction, and then they're going to ceramic coat the whole car and ceramic coat the brakes and the rims.
Okay. The Cayman's black, isn't it?
And,
black is always a difficult car to detail, yeah. I just want to tell the listeners, because I forgot to tell them earlier, sorry, Scott. If you go to Scott's Instagram, it's Metzger99, at Metzger996Turbo, at Metzger996Turbo. I'll put the link in the description of this podcast so you guys can go and have a look at Scott's cars. He has got a few pictures on there, so go and check that out. Give him a follow. So you mentioned before that you might want to... You were thinking about a Carrera 4S. Is that something that's going to come next, Scott?
That's, and again, the same thing that we were just talking about is I think the bubble in that car is moving, and I think it's going to get to the point pretty quickly here where they're going to outprice me or outprice what I would spend. I don't know if I've missed it yet or not, but I'm looking and they're almost a 996 turbo money, which is well into a 997 money.
I mean, I can only like Australian prices, and I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but a 996 Carrera 4S is close to 90,000 Australian dollars. No need to do the conversion, but a 996 turbo can be anywhere around this is a manual turbo, 140 to 165, 170 Australian dollars.
Wow.
So that's quite a big difference. So the Carrera 4S is still available. It's still there. A lot of people spec them in auto. There wasn't a lot of manuals in the Carrera 4S. I don't know whether it's the same in the US. So they're harder to come by. But I think it's a great car. I mean, I really do think it's a great car, especially with your turbo cab. It'd be a good combination if you're going to keep all of them. I'm not sure if you're thinking of moving one on, or you're just thinking of getting an extra one to fill up that garage,
Well,
that gas station.
yeah, we've about got it full already. So, but I'm knocking around the idea of selling the Cayman. Again, it's a blast to drive. It's really fun to drive, but the 944 is just as much fun in a different way. And then if I want to go fast, the turbos that would be the fast car.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
so
you've got a great combination, Scott. I mean, people are going to be listening to this going, you've got all bases covered almost. You've got the transaxle, you've got the 944S, you've got a mid-engine, the Cayman, and then you've got the 911. So you've got all sort of all the different types of Porsches and all the different driving experiences. So you kind of really do know what you want and where you want to go from here.
Yeah. I've also got a love of Land Rovers.
Oh, okay.
So we've got a couple of those floating around too.
I hope you bought them years ago. They're getting very expensive, aren't they?
Yeah. I just sold a 92 Range Rover Classic.
They're so expensive. Those late 80s, 90 Range Rovers are so expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are in the US, but they are I know in Australia. I was looking today at a classic throttle shop in Sydney, and they had one. And it's over $100,000. It's a lot of money.
Wow. Yeah, they're not that here. They're still inexpensive here. The problem you find with them here is they're either junk.
Yeah.
Or they're expensive.
Yeah.
So you can find them all day long for $6,000 or $7,000.
Oh, okay.
But they're junk. They weren't taken care of. And then the good ones are $60,000. But I've also got a Discovery too. I think that's the one I'm going to hold on to.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, the Land Rover thing? Because I've had other people on Owner Stories. Nick from Melbourne in Australia, he's got a Land Rover Series, I'm probably going to get it wrong, Series 2 or Series 3. And Nick in the UK, who's got the 912, he's got a Land Rover. There is a thing there with Porsche owners having Land Rovers. They kind of,
they must go together.
Yeah, they must go together. I mean, I guess it's a good combination, because they are very cool. The old Land Rovers are very, very cool. They're not always great to drive in. I mean, obviously the old Range Rovers are better than the Land Rover Series 2s or Series 3s. But it's definitely a good combination.
Yeah, and like I said, I drive the Discovery. I've got a 2000 Discovery with 50,000 miles on it. And, so that's the one I drive the most out of the Land Rovers.
Yeah. It's good. You've got a good car collection. So Scott, we're getting to the end of the podcast because these usually go for an hour. I knew we'd go over time today because we had quite a few cars to get through, and right. they always go over when we've got multiple cars. But someone comes to where you're living in the US, Indiana. Is that right? Indiana?
Correct.
Someone comes to Indiana. They want to take their Porsche or their sports car on a road. What roads would you recommend, or which roads are your favorite roads where you live? I know you said the roads are terrible, but or even in the US, actually.
I was just going to say you need to bypass all of Indiana as far as the roads go.
So is there a road in the US where you haven't taken your 911 yet, and you'd like to take it to?
You know what? I'm getting ready. We're going to go down to the Tail of the Dragon, which is down in whatever that is, Tennessee, North Carolina, Georgia, that hub. But yeah, there's a RIM list meetup down there that we're going to. I don't know if we're going to take the Cayman or we'll take the Turbo. I'm not sure, but that's our next trip.
Oh, fantastic! So it's a RIM list drive, is it? They've organized a drive down there.
Correct. They're going to do one this spring, and then they're going to do one in the fall.
Okay.
And then we've got reservations for the PCA parade, which is going to be in French Lick, Indiana, this year. Fantastic. So that's about 4 hours from our house. So we're going to go down there. I think I'm going to take the 944 down there.
Very nice. Very nice. That's great, Scott. thank you so much for being on Owner Stories today. Thanks for telling the listeners about your PorscheCooled owner story and telling about your cars. Great story about how you got the 996 back, even how you found the 944. Right place, right time. It always seems to be that way with Porsche. But thank you for sharing the story. Is there anything else you want to tell the listeners before we go?
No, I just thank you for having me on. I love these cars, so probably if we talk again in the near future, we'll probably have another one standing by.
I'd be interested to know that. I'd be interested to know if you pick up that C4S or something else.
Yeah.
Or something else.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that would be the next one.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott. Thanks for taking the time out this afternoon and telling everyone about your story. It's been great.
Great. Thank you, Michael.
All right, everyone. That was Scott coming in from Indiana. Like I said, if you want to follow him on Instagram, it's Metzger. You know how to spell that. Everyone knows how to spell Metzger. 996 Turbo. And that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.